If running a Macintosh environment on a NeXTstation wasn't already strange enough, what if I told you that you could do the same on DOS and even OS2? Meet Executor again, the reverse-engineered Macintosh emulator that bridged the Mac onto the PC and even Windows if you manage to track it down. It's obsolete technology no one uses today, but I'll bring it back to life. I'm the Vintage Collector, and these are my stories. Cross-platform emulation is no new thing, it has existed for decades. And there was real demand for bringing Macintosh applications to the PC. Think of mixed offices with Macs in DTP and PCs everywhere else, or developers wanting to test Mac software without owning a Mac. In contrast to our previous exploration of ARDI's Executor on the NeXT platform, which was based on the Motorola 68K and therefore avoided to translate CPU instructions, doing the same on Intel imposed real overhead. Contemporary testing and user reports from the mid-1990s suggested that Executor running on an Intel 486DX4 class PC could feel as fast or even faster than a similar era Macintosh running natively thanks to its efficiency and the raw performance. But what does this mean in reality? As shown in my previous episode about Executor for NeXTSTEP, that obscure pirated archive also includes a separate RAR file promising to be the DOS version, so let's start from there. Inside the archive there's an install.exe but also a directory name extracted. I'm pretty sure we don't need the latter but only the installer. It's around 3 MB in size, so it likely contains all files needed. You'll find the version on winworldpc.com to be the very same. I don't know why it says it's incomplete though, because during my tests later on I didn't get that impression at all. Now, I'm curious enough to try it on Novell DOS 7 instead of MS-DOS or PC-DOS. One of the contemporary claims back then, especially by Microsoft, was that no other DOS was as compatible as MS-DOS. So if this product runs on Novell DOS, it's one more proof that Novell DOS, previously known as DRDOS, was a very decent and capable DOS version. Now, running install.exe directly off the emulated CD-ROM drive doesn't seem to yield any success here, it just stalls. But maybe that's due to some incompatibility with 86-box CD-ROM emulation or some other obscure issue. So I copied it over and run it directly off the emulated hard drive. Believe it or not, I've seen this kind of weird behavior many times before, and once again this little trick pushes us one step further. Let's see what the README has to say. Oh yes, it recommends disabling write cache to prevent virtual disk corruption and loading the mouse driver, so let's tweak autoexec.bat accordingly. The README is also very specific about the supported disk formats. No real surprise, as the double density drives on the Macintosh use variable rotational speed with group-coded recording compared to PC floppy drives which always used fixed rotational speed and MFM recording. Hence, high density disks go, double density don't. It also says it should run under Windows 3.1. Although the archived ARDI website claims there was also an Executor for Windows. What's definitely interesting is the claim that it runs on OS2 as well and even on Windows NT 3.x. That would imply Executor isn't doing any fancy low-level hardware tricks, since the DOS subsystems on both OS2 and Windows NT were quite restrictive. Alright, what I'm unsure about at this stage is whether besides the mouse driver and disk cache, some extra steps are needed. Should we create an extra disk file or not? Well, let's just fire the bloody thing up as is. And it's asking for serial number and activation key, so it's probably not a demo version after all, but the real thing. The serial number, which by the way was published by ARDI themselves on the former website, unlocks it. And it looks exactly the same as what we saw before when trying the product on NeXTSTEP. It even comes with the same included demos like Lemmings. Performance is nothing to brag about yet, I'm still running this inside 86 box. So let's step up to real hardware and try it on MS-DOS and OS2. But one thing is already confirmed, it runs on Novell-DOS 7, +1 for the Novell-DOS 7 and DR-DOS faction. On MS-DOS 6, I made sure to also disable the write-back disk cache before firing up Executor. For this test I'm using my 1994 high-screen Kalani Tower sporting an original Intel Pentium 60. Yes, the flawed one. Check my linked playlist if you want to learn more about that CPU and this machine's restoration journey. Now, my multi-boot setup comes to action for OS2 Warp 3.0. As we've seen before, OS2's virtual DOS machine needs a few specific settings applied via the session properties. Now, digest this. OS2, an operating system that already offered broad cross-OS compatibility for DOS and Windows, can also run Macintosh applications simply by running Executor inside the VDM. Imagine if IBM had made this a first-class citizen. OS2 would have been the absolute killer operating system. So, what about the Win32 version? Although the ARDI website was archived, their FTP server was not, so that was a dead end. Immaculation has some further documentation on Executor for Windows and a distinct download file. So I got this one as well and renamed it to execwin.exe so I can keep it side by side with the DOS version. At least the file size differs, so it's clearly something else. But is it really the Windows version? Let's give it a shot. Hey, it says it's actually a Win32 program. Being a bit stubborn, I went back to archive.org and found an unofficial FTP mirror that includes ftp.ardi.com. The full set is 19 GB, but the ARDI FTP part is only 49 MB. 7-Zip didn't like it, UNRWA did, and it checks out. It even includes the Linux version of Executor, besides the sought-after Win32 copy, which is identical to the one found on Immaculation. Awesome! Let's try this one on an actual Windows 95 machine. But instead of a Pentium class system like before, I'll use my good old compact Presario CDS 524. This one sports a 486 DX2 processor at 66 MHz, once the workhorse of the early 90s. This should also give us some comparative insights on performance. Running the Executor for Windows installer was straightforward, but when I launched the application it immediately bailed with an obscure stl.dll error complaining about the missing user32 function that only exists in Windows 98. That alone hinted that this was a native Windows build and not just the DOS version in disguise. And my research confirmed it, this version of Executor is actually 2.1 PR16. And that one worked just fine on my compact Armada notebook running on a 233 MHz Intel Pentium MMX. Now, the second Windows version I found is a bit obscure. It's Executor 2.1 PRE11 and it's labeled Executor DOS, but it comes only with a 16-bit Windows installer. Under the hood though, it's just the DOS version, not a native Windows port. But it's a bit newer than the DOS version we tried before, which was plain 2.0. Version naming seems a bit inconsistent with 2.1 PRE11 and 2.1 PR16. PR or PRE most likely just meaning preview or pre-release build. In the end then, I'm happy to see Executor running just fine on my 486DX266 machine with Windows 95. Performance-wise, I honestly expected it to be much worse, having seen it somewhat crawl on the NeXTstation before. But this machine really excels at running the Lemmings demo as quickly as the native DOS version. So yeah, a 486 running Mac Lemmings on Windows 95 using Executor, and it's not even slow. Amazing! Now with all these different versions uncovered, it's needless to say I'm gonna re-upload those properly documented versions onto archive.org, and also reach out to Winwell PC to add them to their collection. I know it's somewhat pointless to compare the 486DX266 with the Pentium 60 and the Pentium MMX 233 because of course one is more powerful than the other. Executor shipped with the speedometer benchmark tool, so let's do some measurements anyway. From what I saw, I'd say a contemporary DX266 machine was already a good fit for many classic Macintosh applications, and the claim for a DX4 being comparatively as fast or even faster than same era Macs seems totally legit. Considering the technological performance limits of that era, it's amazing what performance some creative mind managed to squeeze out of this hardware. Executor is an interesting beast in its own right. Not only does it not depend on Macintosh ROMs, as it was built as a cleanroom implementation through reverse engineering, but it also bridged CPU architectures. While on the Next, no CPU emulation was required, it looked entirely different on PCs. Here, Intel x86 was dominant, forcing Executor to translate Motorola 68K CPU instructions to x86. Still, it managed to play nicely and run on MS-DOS, Novell DOS, OS2 in Windows and even Windows NT, even though we haven't looked at this one today. In essence, emulators like SoftPC and Executor claim to solve real problems in mixed platform environments. Even though Executor's compatibility is said to cover only around 60% of existing applications, I can totally see people effectively using this product back in the day. What about you? What's your experience with cross-platform emulation? Did you use any of these tools back in the day or only much later in retrospect? Share your stories down in the comments, I'd really love to hear them. I'm the Vintage Collector and this was my story for today. Thanks for watching and see you again next Sunday.